The Supreme Court heard a case today, Monday, December 8th, that I think will be their decision will be a defining moment, not just in Donald Trump's presidency, but in the presidency going forward. And my guess is that you probably haven't heard all that much about it because it's about federal agencies, but it's really, 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 that's three reallys, important. So let's get into it. And I'll explain why I think it's so important to the presidency and to Trump. So back in March, Donald Trump fired the two Democratic appointed commissioners to the Federal Trade Commission. One of them was named Rebecca Slaughter. Rebecca Slaughter said that she had been illegally removed from the board from the Federal Trade Commission because Donald Trump, even though he is the president, did not have the power to remove her, that Congress only had the power to remove her. She filed suit. It has now made its way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court heard the oral arguments on Monday, December 8th, and they will rule on this probably in late June or early July. That's when they issue their rulings. And this is a gigantically important case because if there is sort of one big storyline of Donald Trump's second term, I think it's this. He is working to radically expand executive power, right? He is working to take power away from Congress. He is working to take power away from the judicial branch, and he is working to centralize that power in the presidency, to make the presidency above those other two branches. I think that is sort of, if he has a singular goal, I think it's that. And this case plays right into it. And I want to get into this case and its impacts in 1 minute. First thing I want to do before I do that is make a pitch for why you should subscribe. I'm not going to get into a huge thing other than to say I'm independent and I'm authentic. And I think that really matters in this media environment. So I hope you subscribe. Okay. So, as I said, Trump gets in office, and in March, he fires the two Democratic appointed commissioners on the Federal Trade Commission. One of them, Rebecca Slaughter, files suit against him. That's why we have this case. So where do we start here? So in 1935, there was a Supreme Court decision, 1935, that said Congress can put limits on some of the actions that a president can take to remove people from executive branch agencies. And the Federal Trade Commission is an executive branch agency, as are a lot of other, I wrote some of these down, a lot of the other agencies that you might be familiar with and tons that you're not familiar with. So among the agencies that would be affected by this ruling, the Commission on Civil Rights, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, the people who go anytime there's a plane crash or a train crash or anything like that. The U.S. Institute of Peace, which I will note Donald Trump has already renamed the Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. Interestingly, the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, appears to be exempt from this case. The justices of the Supreme Court will hear a separate case about whether Donald Trump can remove the Federal Reserve chairman or other people on the board later in the year. But all told, you're talking about as many as 50 federal agencies could be impacted by this. Now, those agencies were mandated by Congress to have bipartisan leadership in each one. They are appointed by the President of the United States, the people in these roles, but the goal was to insulate these sorts of agencies from political pressures, that there might be, let's say as a Republican president, there might be a majority of Republican appointed commissioners on, say, that Federal Trade Commission or the National Transportation Safety Board, but there would never be only Republicans on it. Donald Trump is saying, why would I, as the president of the United States, not be able to make changes in an executive branch agency so that these people line up with what I want them to do? That's at the heart of this case. And listening to the oral arguments on Monday, I think he's probably going to win. You will remember last year, this Supreme Court, which is a 6-3 conservative majority, gave presidents, including Donald Trump, wide immunity in terms of the actions that they take in office. That case was referenced several times in the oral arguments here, with John Roberts, the Chief Justice, and widely seen as sort of the swing vote, or one of the swing votes in the court, seemingly taking Trump's lawyer's side of the matter. He said that the Federal Trade Commission looks very different and has much broader powers within the executive branch than it did when that 1935 Supreme Court ruling came down. So comparing now to 1935 and using 1935 as a precedent might not be applicable. Roberts has written, by the way, in the past about these independent agencies, executive independent agencies, and been skeptical that the president shouldn't have the power to hire and fire people on them. Now, you never know what the Supreme Court's going to do. Reading the tea leaves of an oral argument can be, a little bit dicey. Obviously, we don't know what they'll do until they rule, like I said, later this summer. But I would say, based on the oral arguments, I think Donald Trump is going to get the right to remove anyone he wants and put anyone else he wants on these 50 agencies, including critical ones. Again, Consumer Product Safety Commission. So are products being made by companies safe for people to use? The Securities and Exchange Commission, huge one. The National Transportation Safety Board, again, a giant one. The Commission on Civil Rights. I mean, all of these could just have Republican appointees. Or if Donald Trump, if Republicans lose in 2028, it would give this Supreme Court ruling, if it comes out in the favor of Trump, would give the Democratic president the right to wholesale remove anyone who he or she didn't want in those roles and put people they wanted in. Again, the story of the last 25 years of the American presidency, at least, has been this idea of the imperial executive, of expanding executive branch power. Dick Cheney, George W. Bush's vice president, was a huge believer in the expansion of executive authority. They tried to do as much as they could from 2000 to 2008. Barack Obama worked to expand his executive authority, not as aggressively as Bush. Trump in his first term did a fair amount of this, but not in as orchestrated a way and as honestly a strategic a way and as smart political and legal a way as he is doing right now. So that has been the story of the last 2.5 decades of the presidency. I think if the Supreme Court rules that Donald Trump can get rid of FTC commissioners or commissioners at any of these quasi-independent executive agencies, it's another win for the expansion of power in the executive branch. Another example that even though the founding fathers created 3 equal branches, the legislative, the judicial, and the executive is on the rise. The executive continues to take more and more and more power. The Supreme Court will have other opportunities to do that. Obviously, the Republican-led Congress has sort of laid down for Donald Trump and handed over a bunch of their responsibilities to Trump already. And now it's up to the judicial branch to decide whether they legally can do that. It appears to me that they are going to say yes, which will be another step in consolidating power in the executive branch, giving the president, this president, yes, but all future presidents as well, more and more and more power, and creating the executive branch as sort of a branch above the legislative and the judicial branch, which I will note is not what the founding fathers envisioned. All right, that's it for me. As I said, I hope you subscribe if you're not already a subscriber to this channel. I am independent from big media. I am independent from the 2 political parties. I'm also authentic. I'm always calling it the way I see it. I'm never in the fan service business. You might agree with me sometimes. You'll disagree with me sometimes too. That's a good thing. If you are already a subscriber, do me a favor, like and comment on this video. That helps me grow among people who aren't subscribers with the YouTube algorithm. And last thing, be an evangelist. Go out and tell people why you think this channel is important, why they should subscribe, and what you get from it. That would be great for me. Okay, everyone, take care.